Okay. Another example where we have a non-polynomial and a fraction with a polynomial. So when this happens, like I said, you got to think about which one's going to go bigger, faster, or which one's getting small. You got to see what's happening in the numerator and the denominator. So if x is going to infinity, sine of x, well, sine of x is kind of a nice function. It just bounces back and forth like this the whole time. So even if x is getting super big, this graph just bounces back and forth the whole time. So sine of x stays small. Sine of x doesn't really escape to infinity. It stays very small. It just bounces back and forth between -1 and 1. But if x is going to infinity, then this denominator is going to get very big. And what happens is we have a small number divided by a big number, and x is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, greater and greater and greater. So we end up with a small number over a huge number, and it's just getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and that heads to 0. It never equals 0 at, this will equal 0 where sine equals 0, okay? So you can see like sine equals 0 at many, many places. That's trigonometry. It equals 0 at all the pi's. Pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi. All right? But it's not going to equal 0 forever at some number. It's always going to be bouncing back and forth around the axis. What that function looks like, if you were to graph it, it would look like this. It would have an open circle here, and it would just go like this. And dividing by that x term is just going to make our numbers get much, much, much smaller, and it just zooms in on 0 like this. But it bounces back and forth the whole time out here. It's just super small. But it gets closer and closer to 0, meaning that as x gets bigger, we can trap this thing within a certain distance around 0. That's what the limit means as x goes to infinity. Remember that. It means that the function is going to be trapped super close to 0. It might be above or below 0. In this case, it will be above and below. It's going to bounce back and forth, but it's just going to be so close to it. And if the further we go out, the closer these values are going to stay to 0, and that's why the answer is 0.